Welcome, dear listener, to another gentle journey into 8th century China and Central Asia. Tonight, we'll discover the quiet world of tea trading along the ancient Silk Road, alongside merchants who lived centuries before our modern highways existed. Whether you're settling into bed or already drifting toward deep sleep, I'm grateful you're here to explore these quiet corners of history with me. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? It's a lovely thought. All of us finding our way to deep sleep through these meditative stories from long ago. You stand in the cool morning air of a tea garden in Xi'an province, watching steam rise from bamboo baskets filled with freshly picked leaves, about to begin a journey that will carry you thousands of miles across mountains and deserts. The year is 756, and you have been preparing for this expedition for 3 full seasons. Your hands, already stain the colour of weak tea from years of handling the dried leaves, move carefully through the final inspection of your goods. Each bamboo basket contains exactly 47 pounds of tea, not a measure you chose arbitrarily, but one that experience has taught you represents the perfect balance between a camel's carrying capacity and the profit margins that will sustain your family through the winter months ahead. The tea garden where you stand belongs to Master Chen, an elderly man whose family has cultivated these particular hillsides for 7 generations. His fingers, gnarled like the ancient tea bushes themselves, had taught you years ago to recognise the subtle differences between leaves picked at dawn versus those gathered in the afternoon heat. The morning leaves, he explained in his patient, weathered voice, retain more of their essential oils, creating a brew that merchants in distant lands prize above all others. You run your palm across the surface of the nearest basket, feeling the slightly rough texture of the dried leaves beneath the woven bamboo cover. The scent that rises is complex, earthy and sweet, with hints of the jasmine flowers that grow wild along the garden's edges. This particular batch consists of what the local farmers call white eyebrow tea, named for the silvery appearance of the young buds mixed among the darker leaves. It will travel well, you know, maintaining its flavour even after months of jostling on camelback across the unforgiving terrain ahead. Your preparations began before dawn, as they have for the past week, in the small wooden house where you lodged during your visits to this region. You rose to the sound of roosters calling across the valley and the gentle percussion of rain dripping from the thatched roof onto the stone path outside your window. The morning ritual never varies. First, you brew a small pot of tea using leaves from your personal supply, not the premium grades destined for foreign markets, but a simple, honest tea that clears your mind and prepares your body for the long day ahead. The teapot you use for this morning ceremony is small, no larger than your closed fist, made from the distinctive purple clay found only in nearby Yixing. Its surface has developed a deep, lustrous patina from years of use, and the handle fits your grip so perfectly that lifting it feels like greeting an old friend. The water you pour comes from a spring located halfway up the mountain, carried down each morning by Master Chen's youngest grandson, in wooden buckets that have been worn smooth by countless trips along the rocky path. As you sip this morning tea, your thoughts naturally turn to the route that stretches before you. The journey to Samarkand will require approximately 4 months, assuming favourable weather and no significant delays at the various checkpoints controlled by local officials who expect appropriate gifts in exchange for safe passage. Your caravan consists of 12 camels, 4 horses and 7 other merchants, each specialising in different goods that appeal to the sophisticated tastes of Central Asian buyers. Li Wei, your travelling companion for the past 3 expeditions, trades primarily in silk, not the elaborate brocades favoured by imperial courts, but sturdy, practical fabrics that wealthy merchants' wives use for everyday garments. His knowledge of fabric weights and dye quality complements your expertise in tea grading, and over the years you have developed an easy partnership based on mutual respect and shared understanding of the challenges that await beyond China's western borders. The preparation of your tea for transport follows procedures refined through generations of trial and error. Each individual leaf must be dried to precisely the correct moisture content. Too dry, and the leaves crumble into powder during the journey. Too moist, and they develop an unpleasant musty flavour that renders them worthless in foreign markets. Master Chen's workers spread the picked leaves on large bamboo mats, turning them regularly with wooden paddles as the sun slowly draws out the excess water. The drying process creates its own rhythm in the tea garden. Workers move between the mats in a slow, meditative dance, their feet making soft shuffling sounds against the packed earth. Occasionally, someone calls out an observation about a particular batch, perhaps noting that the leaves from the eastern slope are drying more quickly than those from the shadier western terraces, or pointing out that the morning's humidity will require an extra hour of sun exposure. You examine each mat carefully, picking up small handfuls of leaves and crushing them gently between your fingers to test their brittleness. The ideal texture feels similar to paper that has been crumpled and then smoothed flat, pliable enough to avoid breaking into fragments, but dry enough to resist the mould and decay that can destroy an entire shipment during the humid weeks spent crossing river valleys and mountain passes. The packing process requires equal attention to detail. The bamboo baskets must be lined with sheets of mulberry paper, each piece carefully smoothed to eliminate wrinkles that could create pockets where moisture might collect. Over this paper lining, you spread a thin layer of dried orange peels, not for their fragrance, though they do add a subtle citrus note to the tea's aroma, but because their natural oils help repel the insects that otherwise feast on tea leaves during long journeys. The tea itself goes into the baskets in layers, with the choicest grades at the bottom where they will be protected from dust and moisture, and the more common varieties near the top where they can absorb any dampness that penetrates the outer wrappings. Between each layer you sprinkle a handful of dried chrysanthemum petals, their papery texture creating small air pockets that allow the tea to breathe while preventing the leaves from compacting too tightly together. Sealing the baskets requires a particular technique that Master Chen's father had learned from Tibetan traders many decades ago. A piece of yak hide, specially treated with salt and tree sap to make it waterproof, covers the top of each basket. This hide must be stretched tight and secured with strips of braided hemp rope, the knots tied in a specific pattern that experienced merchants recognize as your personal signature. Any tampering with these seals during the journey will be immediately obvious, protecting both your goods and your reputation in the markets, where trust forms the foundation of all business relationships. Your personal travelling kit occupies one small leather saddlebag, its contents reflecting the practical necessities of life on the road. 2 changes of clothing, both cut from the same sturdy cotton fabric that local farmers wear, loose trousers that allow freedom of movement, and long-sleeved tunics that protect your skin from sun and sand. A pair of felt boots, their soles reinforced with yak leather, for walking on sharp rocks and through muddy stream crossings. A small metal mirror, a wooden comb and a cake of soap made from animal fat and plant ash. More important than these personal items are the tools of your trade. A small brass scale, its weights carefully calibrated and kept in a wooden box lined with silk padding. A magnifying lens for examining tea leaves and detecting the subtle signs of inferior quality that dishonest suppliers sometimes attempt to hide among better grades. A collection of small ceramic cups, each designed for tasting different varieties of tea, their shapes and glazes chosen to enhance specific flavours and aromas. The morning light gradually brightens as you complete your final preparations. The mist that clung to the hillsides at dawn slowly dissipates, revealing the full panorama of the tea garden stretching down into the valley below. Thousands of individual tea bushes, each one carefully pruned to chest height for easy picking, create geometric patterns across the landscape. The newest plantings, identifiable by their lighter green foliage, occupy the lower slopes where the soil retains more moisture, while the oldest and most valuable bushes cling to the rocky upper terraces where the harsh growing conditions concentrate the leaves' essential flavours. Workers throughout the garden continue their morning tasks with the unhurried efficiency that comes from long practice. Here, a woman sorts freshly picked leaves according to size and quality, her weathered hands moving with surprising speed as she separates the tender new growth from the tougher older leaves. There, a man repairs a section of bamboo fencing damaged by the previous night's wind, weaving new strips into the existing framework with the same patient attention to detail that characterises every aspect of tea cultivation. The sounds of the garden create their own gentle symphony. The rustle of leaves as workers move between the rows, the soft thud of tea being dumped into collection baskets, the distant lowing of water buffalo in the rice paddies that bordered the tea gardens. Occasionally, the voice of Master Chen himself, calling out instructions or observations in the melodic dialect of this mountain region. As the sun climbs higher, you notice the subtle changes in temperature and humidity that will affect the day's drying process. A slight breeze carries the scent of wood smoke from the cooking fires in the workers' quarters, mixed with the green, astringent aroma of fresh tea leaves and the sweeter fragrance of wild flowers blooming along the terraced walls. These sensory details will stay with you during the long months ahead, providing comfort and connection to home when you find yourself in the alien landscapes of distant countries. The final task before departure involves checking your travel documents and the letters of introduction that will smooth your passage through the various kingdoms and city-states along your route. These papers, written on expensive mulberry paper in the formal script reserved for official business, identify you as a legitimate merchant authorised to engage in foreign trade. Each document bears the red seal of the appropriate Chinese official, stamped in vermilion ink that gradually fades over time but remains legally valid for 2 full years. More valuable than these official papers, however, are the personal letters you carry from previous trading partners, brief notes written in Arabic, Persian and Sogdian scripts that recommend you to their associates in distant cities. These informal introductions open doors that no official document can unlock, creating networks of trust and mutual obligation that span the entire length of the Silk Road. Your purse contains the silver coins that will cover expenses during the journey, payments to caravan leaders, fees for crossing rivers, bribes for customs officials, and the countless small purchases necessary for survival in foreign lands. The coins themselves tell stories of the route's international character, Chinese silver mixed with Persian gold, Indian copper, and Byzantine bronze, each piece stamped with the image of a different ruler and inscribed in a different script. As the morning advances toward midday, the moment of departure draws near. Your camels stand patiently in the courtyard outside Master Chen's compound, their loads already secured and balanced according to the ancient formulas that prevent injury during the difficult mountain crossings ahead. These animals, purchased from Mongolian herders at the great market in Lanzhou, are renowned for their endurance and gentle temperaments. Their thick woolly coats will provide warmth during the cold nights at high altitude, while their broad padded feet distribute weight efficiently across loose sand and rocky terrain. The led camel, a mature female whose steady pace sets the rhythm for the entire caravan, wears a small bronze bell that chimes softly with each step. This bell serves both practical and ceremonial purposes. Its sound helps keep the animals together during dust storms, when visibility drops to mere feet, while its music provides a constant, reassuring presence during the lonely hours of travel through empty landscapes. Standing here in the tea garden, surrounded by the familiar sights and sounds of home, you feel the mixture of anticipation and apprehension that always accompanies the beginning of a long journey. The route ahead promises both profit and peril, moments of beauty and periods of hardship, encounters with fascinating strangers and stretches of profound solitude. But as you run your fingers one last time across the sealed tea baskets, feeling the rough texture of the bamboo and breathing in the complex aroma of the leaves within, you wonder what stories these particular baskets will accumulate during the months ahead, and whether the merchants who eventually purchase your tea in Samarkand's bustling marketplace will be able to taste, in their evening cups, something of this quiet morning in the mountains of Fujian? The answer to that question begins to unfold 3 days later, as you stand in the dusty courtyard of a caravanserai outside the city of Lanzhou, watching a Sogdian merchant named Rustam examine your tea with the methodical precision of someone who has spent decades evaluating goods from across the known world. Rustam's fingers, stained dark from years of handling everything from Indian pepper to Byzantine silk, move through your tea leaves with surprising gentleness. He lifts small pinches to his nose, inhaling deeply before setting them aside in neat piles, arranged according to his own mysterious classification system. His weathered face reveals nothing of his thoughts, but you notice the slight nod he gives when examining the white eyebrow grade that forms the heart of your shipment. The caravanserai where this evaluation takes place represents a world unto itself, a fortified compound where merchants from dozens of different cultures converge to form the trading expeditions that will carry their goods across the vast distances separating China from the markets of Central Asia. The thick mud brick walls enclose a space large enough to accommodate several hundred camels along with their human companions, while the covered galleries that line the inner courtyard provide shelter for the delicate negotiations that determine which merchants will travel together and how profits will be shared. You have been awake since before dawn, following the same careful routine that governs every important business day. First came the ritual brewing of tea in your small purple clay pot, using water drawn from the caravanserai's deep well and heated over a small charcoal fire in the corner of your assigned sleeping alcove. The tea this morning was a simple green variety, chosen not for its exceptional quality, but for its ability to clear your mind and settle your stomach before the crucial discussions ahead. While sipping this preparatory tea, you reviewed the notes you've kept during your 3 years of trading along this route. Careful records of prices paid and received, observations about seasonal variations in demand, and detailed descriptions of the merchants whose partnerships have proven most profitable. These notes, written in your own abbreviated script on sheets of rice paper thin enough to minimize weight in your travel pack, constitute your most valuable possession, aside from the tea itself. Rustam speaks to you in a mixture of Chinese and Sogdian, occasionally switching to Persian, when technical terms require precision that neither of you can achieve in the other's language. His Chinese, learned during 20 years of trading expeditions, carries the distinctive accent of someone whose native tongue shapes different sounds, but his vocabulary includes commercial terms that many Chinese merchants never master. When he describes the market conditions awaiting your tea in Samarkand, his words paint pictures of specific customers whose preferences he has learned through countless transactions. The physician Ishak, Rustam explains while examining a handful of your premium grade leaves, prepares medicines using tea from the mountains south of the Yellow River. He believes, though I cannot say if this is true, that leaves grown in rocky soil possess stronger healing properties than those cultivated in rich valley earth. Your tea, if it comes from the terraced gardens I remember near Fuzhou, will interest him greatly. The process of forming a trading partnership involves far more than simply agreeing on the division of profits from eventual sales. Each merchant must contribute not only goods, but also specialised knowledge, established relationships, and the reputation that opens doors in foreign cities. Rustam's network of contacts in the Sogdian communities scattered across Central Asia complements your understanding of Chinese tea grades and production methods, while Li Wei's expertise in silk evaluation adds another layer of commercial sophistication to your proposed partnership. The practical arrangements require equally careful consideration. Questions of which routes to follow, where to stop for resupply, how to handle customs payments, and what gifts to present to local officials along the way must all be resolved before the caravan departs. Rustam produces a worn leather portfolio containing maps drawn on sheepskin, their surfaces marked with notations in several different scripts, indicating water sources, seasonal dangers, and the locations of friendly settlements where travellers can expect hospitality rather than hostility. Your examination of these maps reveals the sobering reality of the journey ahead. The The direct distance from Lanzhou to Samarkand measures perhaps 800 miles as a bird might fly, but the actual route followed by trading caravans stretches nearly twice that length, as it winds around mountain ranges, follows river valleys to avoid desert crossings, and detours to visit intermediate markets where fresh supplies can be purchased and local taxes paid. The first major challenge lies in crossing the Hexi Corridor, a narrow strip of habitable land squeezed between the Tibetan Plateau to the south and the Gobi Desert to the north. This corridor, barely 50 miles wide at its narrowest point, funnels all traffic between China and the western regions through a series of oasis towns, where water and fodder are available but expensive. Rustam's maps indicate the precise locations of wells and springs, information gathered over many expeditions and verified through correspondence with other merchants who have travelled these routes recently. Beyond the corridor lies an even greater obstacle, the Taklamakan Desert, whose very name means "go in and you won't come out" in the local Turkic dialect. No caravan attempts to cross this wasteland directly. Instead, the established routes follow its northern and southern edges, connecting the oasis cities that survive on a combination of agriculture, trade, and the fees they collect from passing merchants. Each of these cities represents a distinct political entity with its own rulers, customs, and expectations regarding foreign traders. The negotiations with Rustam continue through the morning as other potential partners observe from a respectful distance. A Persian trader specialising in precious stones examines your tea ceremony equipment with obvious interest, while an Arab merchant whose camels carry bundles of Indian cotton fabric listens carefully to your discussions about market conditions in Samarkand. These observers are not merely curious. They are evaluating whether your partnership might benefit from additional members whose goods would complement your existing combination of tea and silk. By midday, the basic terms of your agreement with Rustam have been established. Your tea will travel in his caravan, which departs in 5 days and includes 17 other merchants carrying goods ranging from Chinese lacquerware to Tibetan medicinal herbs. The profits from sales in Samarkand will be divided according to a complex formula that takes into account not only the value of goods contributed by each partner, but also their experience in specific markets and their ability to provide services like translation, negotiation with officials, and security during dangerous portions of the route. The afternoon brings a different set of preparations as you accompany Rustam to the livestock markets, where additional camels and horses are purchased to accommodate the expanding size of your caravan. The animal traders who operate these markets form their own distinct community within the larger world of the caravanserai, their knowledge extending far beyond simple buying and selling to include the veterinary skills necessary for maintaining healthy animals during long journeys. Master Hu, an elderly Chinese trader whose family has specialised in caravan animals for 4 generations, examines each potential purchase with the thoroughness of a physician diagnosing illness. He checks teeth to determine age, runs his hands along legs to detect old injuries that might cause lameness under stress, and observes breathing patterns that could indicate respiratory problems. His practiced eye can distinguish between animals bred for desert travel and those better suited to mountain terrain. Knowledge that could mean the difference between success and disaster when crossing the challenging landscapes ahead. The camels selected for your portion of the caravan are all mature females, chosen for their reliability rather than their speed. These animals, originally bred by nomadic tribes living north of the Great Wall, possess the double-humped physique that stores fat reserves sufficient for weeks of travel through regions where fodder is scarce. Their thick wool coats, now beginning to shed in preparation for the warmer months ahead, will regrow to provide insulation during the cold. Autumn nights when your caravan begins its return journey. Each camel receives a thorough inspection before purchase, a process that reveals the intimate relationship between merchant and animal that characterises life on the Silk Road. Rustam demonstrates the proper technique for examining a camel's feet, pointing out the thick leathery pads that prevent injury when walking across sharp rocks, and explaining how to detect the early signs of the foot rot that can cripple an animal during river crossings. His movements around these large, potentially dangerous creatures show the confidence that comes from years of experience, though he maintains the respectful caution that any wise person exercises when dealing with animals capable of inflicting serious injury. The horses purchased for your caravan serve a different purpose than the burden-bearing camels. Smaller and more agile, they provide transportation for scouts who range ahead of the main group to identify potential dangers or locate water sources when the established wells prove dry. These horses, bred by Mongolian herders specifically for endurance rather than beauty, can survive on the sparse vegetation available along the caravan routes while carrying riders across terrain too rough for heavily loaded camels. Your personal mount, selected after careful consideration of your limited riding experience, is a gentle mare whose patient temperament makes her suitable for a merchant more accustomed to walking than riding. Her coat, a dusty brown colour that will blend invisibly with the landscape ahead, shows the scars of previous journeys, but no signs of the lameness or breathing problems that would make her unsuitable for the arduous trip to Samarkand. The process of outfitting your caravan extends beyond animals to include the countless small items necessary for survival during months of travel through regions where supplies cannot be purchased. Cooking pots and water containers, repair materials for damaged equipment, medicinal herbs for treating both human and animal ailments, and the tools needed for maintaining weapons and tack, all must be acquired and distributed among the various merchants according to their ability to carry additional weight. Your contribution to these communal supplies focuses on items related to your expertise in tea preparation and evaluation. A selection of ceramic cups and small teapots, carefully wrapped in silk padding to prevent breakage during the jolting motion of camel travel. Packages of medicinal teas whose preparation you understand, including varieties used for treating the digestive problems that commonly afflict travellers adjusting to unfamiliar foods and water. Most importantly, samples of your finest tea grades, reserved not for sale, but for the diplomatic gifts that smooth relations with officials and potential customers throughout your journey. The evening brings the formal ceremony that marks the establishment of your trading partnership and the official formation of your caravan. This ritual, observed by merchants throughout Central Asia regardless of their religious or cultural backgrounds, serves both practical and symbolic purposes. The practical aspects involve the recording of each merchant's contributions and obligations in documents that will govern their relationships during the months ahead. The symbolic elements create bonds of mutual trust and responsibility that often prove more valuable than any written contract. The ceremony takes place in the caravanserai's main courtyard under the light of oil lamps that cast dancing shadows against the mud brick walls. Rustam, as the senior partner and caravan leader, reads aloud the terms of your agreement while other merchants witness the proceedings. His voice, carrying clearly in the still night air, recites not only the commercial arrangements, but also the codes of conduct that will govern behaviour during the journey ahead. These codes address everything from the division of water during shortages to the procedures for caring for sick animals and the protocols for dealing with bandits or hostile officials. Some provisions reflect the practical necessities of group travel. Decisions about rest stops and route changes must be made collectively, with disputes resolved through discussion rather than individual action. Others acknowledge the cultural diversity of your caravan. Dietary restrictions will be respected, religious observances accommodated, and conflicts arising from misunderstandings about customs or language will be settled through mediation rather than confrontation. As the ceremony concludes and the participants disperse to their sleeping quarters, you remain in the courtyard for a few additional minutes, savouring the complex mixture of excitement and apprehension that always accompanies the beginning of a great enterprise. The familiar weight of your tea samples carried in a small leather pouch suspended from your belt provides reassurance that you possess goods valuable enough to justify the risks ahead. Yet the unknown factors, weather conditions, political situations in distant cities, the health of animals and humans during the challenging journey, create uncertainties that no amount of preparation can completely eliminate. The sounds of the caravanserai settling into its nighttime rhythm surround you as you finally make your way toward your sleeping alcove. Camels shifting position with soft grunts and the rustle of straw bedding. Conversations in a dozen different languages gradually fading as merchants conclude their evening business. The distant chanting of prayers from travellers whose religious traditions require specific observances before sleep. These sounds, so different from the quiet mountain village where your journey began, remind you that you have already travelled far from the familiar world of Chinese tea gardens into the cosmopolitan realm of international commerce. Your sleeping alcove, carved into the thick wall of the caravanserai, provides just enough space for your travel pack and bedroll. The stone walls, still warm from the day's sun, will retain heat through the cool night hours while protecting you from the wind that whistles across the courtyard. As you arrange your few possessions in the small niches provided for personal items, your fingers encounter the worn leather of your travel journal, reminding you to record the day's events before sleep claims your attention. The entries you write by the light of a small oil lamp capture not only the commercial details of your negotiations with Rustam, but also the sensory impressions that will help you remember this particular evening years from now. The taste of the evening tea you shared with your new partners, brewed from leaves contributed by each merchant as a gesture of mutual respect. The scent of horse and camel that permeates everything in the caravanserai. The feel of desert sand already beginning to infiltrate your clothing despite the protective walls, that hints at the landscapes awaiting your caravan. As you finally extinguish your lamp and settle into your bedroll, the question that occupied your thoughts this morning seems to have evolved into something more complex. The stories your tea will accumulate during the journey ahead have already begun with today's negotiations and new partnerships. But now you find yourself wondering about a different question entirely. Whether the merchant you become during this expedition will bear any resemblance to the person who stood in Master Chen's tea garden just a few days ago, breathing in the familiar sense of home and preparing for an adventure whose true dimensions were still beyond imagination. That transformation begins to reveal itself during the second week of travel, as your caravan follows the ancient track that winds through the Hexi corridor toward the oasis town of Dunhuang. The rhythm of daily life on the road has settled into patterns as predictable as the movement of shadows across the desert floor, yet each day brings subtle variations that gradually reshape your understanding of yourself and the world through which you travel. You wake each morning to the sound of Rustam's voice calling the caravan to prepare for departure, his words carrying clearly through the crisp pre-dawn air that characterises this season in the high desert. The temperature at this hour hovers just above freezing, cold enough that your breath forms visible clouds, but not so bitter that water freezes in the leather containers suspended from your camel's pack saddle. This daily awakening has become as natural as sunrise itself, your body's internal rhythms adjusting to the demands of a schedule determined not by human convenience, but by the practical necessities of desert travel. The first task each morning involves checking your tea cargo for any signs of damage or deterioration caused by the previous day's journey. You run your hands along the bamboo baskets, feeling for cracks or loose bindings that might allow moisture to penetrate the protective wrappings within. The constant motion of camel travel, with its peculiar swaying gait that rises and falls like a boat riding ocean swells, places stresses on packed goods that no amount of careful preparation can entirely eliminate. Yet so far, your tea has survived the journey without significant problems, the ancient packing techniques proving their worth once again. Your morning inspection ritual has expanded beyond the simple examination of goods to include a careful observation of your camel's condition and behaviour. The mare assigned to carry your tea load, whom you have begun calling Patience for her steady temperament and uncomplaining acceptance of the daily routine, shows no signs of the foot problems or digestive ailments that commonly afflict animals during long journeys. Her appetite remains strong, evident in the thoroughness with which she strips edible vegetation from the hardy shrubs that dot the landscape, and her coat maintains the healthy luster that indicates adequate nutrition, despite the sparse fodder available along this route. The relationship developing between you and this animal represents one of the unexpected aspects of caravan life that no amount of advanced preparation could have anticipated. Initially, patience was simply a means of transportation, a four-legged vehicle whose function was to carry your goods from one market to another. But the daily routine of loading and unloading, feeding and watering, and monitoring her health has created a bond of mutual dependence that extends far beyond mere commercial utility. You've learned to read the subtle signs of her moods and physical condition, while she's grown accustomed to your particular habits and handling techniques. The morning routine continues with the preparation of tea, both for your personal consumption and for sharing with your travelling companions. This daily ceremony has evolved into something more elaborate than the simple morning brewing you practiced in Master Chen's tea garden. The limited supply of good water available along the caravan route requires careful conservation, while the need to accommodate the preferences of partners from different cultural backgrounds has led you to experiment with brewing techniques and flavour combinations that would never occur to merchants operating within a single cultural tradition. Rustam, whose Sogdian background includes extensive contact with both Chinese and Persian tea traditions, has taught you to appreciate the subtle differences that altitude and water quality create in the brewing process. The water available at high desert elevations, he explains while demonstrating his preferred technique, contains minerals that enhance certain flavours while suppressing others. Tea that tastes perfectly balanced, when brewed with the soft mountain water of Fujian province, requires different proportions and steeping times when prepared with the harder water drawn from desert wells. Your morning tea sessions have become informal meetings where the day's travel plans are discussed and any problems from the previous day's journey are resolved. Li Wei, your original partner, whose silk goods travel in baskets loaded on camels, walking just behind your own animals, uses these gatherings to share information about road conditions ahead, gleaned from conversations with merchants travelling in the opposite direction. These encounters, brief exchanges of vital intelligence conducted at the wells and camping grounds that serve as the communication network of the Silk Road, provide updates on everything from political situations in distant cities to the seasonal availability of fodder and water. The Persian stone merchant, whose name you have learned is Darius, contributes his own specialised knowledge to these morning discussions. His previous journeys have taken him along routes both north and south of your current path, giving him a broader perspective on the strategic choices that determine a caravan's ultimate success or failure. When he describes the relative advantages of the northern route through Turpan versus the southern passage around the Taklamakan Desert, his words carry the authority of someone who has experienced both options and understands their implications for different types of cargo. These conversations, conducted in the mixture of languages that serves as the common tongue of international commerce, gradually expand your understanding of the broader political and economic forces that shape life along the Silk Road. The taxes collected by various local rulers, you learn, reflect not simply their desire for revenue, but complex relationships between settled populations and nomadic tribes, between established trade routes and newer alternatives, between religious communities whose theological differences sometimes translate into commercial advantages or disadvantages. The daily departure from each camping ground follows a choreographed sequence developed through generations of experience with large-scale animal management. The lead camels, trained to respond to specific calls and hand signals, rise from their resting positions and assume the formation that will be maintained throughout the day's march. Behind them, the remaining animals fall into line according to a hierarchy based partly on their individual temperaments and partly on the preferences of their human companions. Your position in this daily procession places you roughly in the middle of the caravan, close enough to the leaders to hear important announcements, but far enough back to avoid the clouds of dust raised by the animals ahead. This location provides an excellent vantage point for observing the landscape through which you travel, while the steady pace of the march allows time for the contemplation that has become one of the unexpected pleasures of life on the road. The terrain through which your caravan moves changes gradually but continuously as you progress westward through the corridor. The cultivated fields and permanent settlements that characterise the eastern end of this route give way to increasingly sparse vegetation and more widely scattered oases. The mountains that define the northern and southern boundaries of your path seem to press closer together, creating a landscape that feels simultaneously vast and constricted, open to enormous skies while channeling all human movement through narrow passages between impassable barriers. The colours of this landscape shift throughout each day, as the angle of sunlight changes and shadows move across the rocky slopes and sandy valleys. In the early morning, when the sun rises behind the eastern mountains, everything appears painted in shades of blue and purple, the cool tones creating an impression of freshness and possibility that lifts the spirits despite the challenges ahead. As the day progresses and the sun climbs higher, these colours warm to browns and golds, the harsh beauty of the desert revealing itself in the stark clarity of shadows and highlights. Your daily routine includes regular stops for rest and water, scheduled according to the availability of wells and the stamina of the animals rather than human convenience. These breaks provide opportunities for the social interactions that bind your diverse group of merchants into a functioning community. During the midday halt, when the sun's heat makes further travel inadvisable until late afternoon, you often find yourself engaged in conversations that range far beyond the immediate concerns of commerce and logistics. Ahmed, an Arab trader whose camels carry bundles of Indian cotton, tells stories of the monsoon rains that determine agricultural success across vast regions of the subcontinent. His descriptions of landscapes where water falls from the sky in quantities that would flood entire provinces of your native China create images so vivid that you can almost smell the humid earth and feel the warm rain against your skin. These stories, told in the mixture of Arabic and Persian that serves as his preferred language of communication, transport you to regions as different from the present desert environment as fire is from water. The evening routine begins with the selection of a suitable camping ground, a process that requires careful evaluation of factors ranging from the availability of water and shelter to the defensive possibilities offered by the local terrain. Rustam, whose experience in these matters far exceeds that of any other member of your caravan, examines potential sites with the methodical attention of a military commander choosing a battlefield. His decisions, explained to the group during the evening meal, reveal the complex calculations that ensure both the safety and comfort of travellers in regions where both bandits and severe weather pose constant threats. The establishment of your nightly camp follows procedures designed to maximise efficiency, while accommodating the different needs and preferences of your multicultural group. The animals are unloaded and hobbled in areas where they can graze on available vegetation, while remaining close enough for quick loading if circumstances require sudden departure. Cooking fires are built in locations that provide protection from wind, while minimising the visibility that might attract unwanted attention from hostile observers. Your contribution to the evening routine centres on the preparation of tea for the entire group, a responsibility that has evolved naturally from your expertise in this area and your generous sharing of your personal supply during the journey's early days. This nightly tea service has become more than simple hospitality. It represents a moment of calm reflection that helps process the day's experiences and prepare mentally for the challenges of the following day. The tea you brew each evening varies according to the water available and the preferences of your companions. Sometimes you prepare the robust, earthy varieties that complement the hearty evening meals of rice, dried meat, and preserved vegetables that sustain travellers in regions where fresh food is scarce. Other evenings call for the more delicate green teas that aid digestion and promote the restful sleep essential for maintaining health during long journeys. The conversations that accompany these evening tea sessions range across topics as diverse as the backgrounds of your travelling companions. Darius shares knowledge of gemstone markets in distant cities, describing the preferences of wealthy customers whose tastes determine the value of different varieties of jade, turquoise, and carnelian. Li Wei discusses the technical aspects of silk production, explaining how variations in climate and silkworm breeding affect the quality and characteristics of different fabric grades. These exchanges of specialised knowledge create an informal education in the complexities of international trade that no formal schooling could provide. You learn to recognise the signs of political instability that affect commodity prices, to understand the seasonal patterns that determine when different goods command premium prices in specific markets, and to appreciate the cultural factors that make certain products more or less desirable to customers from different backgrounds. The conversations often continue well into the evening, long after the cooking fires have burned down to glowing embers and the animals have settled into their nightly rest. The desert silence that surrounds your camp during these hours creates an intimacy that encourages the sharing of personal stories and observations that would never be expressed during the busy activity of daily travel. Under the brilliant canopy of stars visible in the clear desert air, your fellow merchants speak of their families, their dreams, and their fears with an honesty that reveals the common humanity underlying the diverse cultural traditions they represent. These evening conversations gradually deepen your understanding of the motivations that drive men to undertake the risks and hardships of long-distance trade. Some, like yourself, are driven by economic necessity, the simple need to support families and maintain social positions that depend on commercial success. Others pursue adventure and the excitement of experiencing different cultures and landscapes. Still others are motivated by curiosity, driven to understand the vast world that extends beyond the boundaries of their native regions. As the weeks of travel accumulate, you notice subtle changes in your own perspective and priorities that reflect your growing adaptation to life on the road. Concerns that seemed vitally important during your preparations in the tea gardens of Fujian province have faded in significance, replaced by more immediate worries about animal health, weather conditions, and the countless small decisions that determine each day's progress. The person you were before beginning this journey feels increasingly distant, like a character from someone else's story, rather than your own recent past. The physical demands of caravan life have left their own marks on your body and daily habits. Your hands, once soft from the indoor work of tea evaluation and packing, have developed calluses from handling ropes and pack saddles. Your face and arms have darkened under the constant exposure to desert sun and wind. Most significantly, your stamina has increased dramatically. The daily routine of walking beside loaded camels for hours at a time has strengthened muscles and improved endurance in ways that the sedentary life of a village merchant never required. Yet as your caravan crests a low ridge on this particular morning, and the distant walls of Dunhuang become visible for the first time, shimmering in the heat haze that rises from the desert floor like a mirage made solid, you realise that the most profound changes occurring within you are not physical, but mental and emotional. The questions that seemed so important at the beginning of your journey about profit margins and market conditions have evolved into deeper inquiries about identity and purpose that will continue long after your tea has been sold and your immediate commercial objectives achieved. Standing in your stirrups to get a better view of the approaching city, feeling the familiar weight of your tea samples bouncing gently against your hip, and breathing in the dry, sage-scented air of the high desert, you find yourself wondering whether the spiritual transformation occurring within you during these weeks of travel will prove more valuable than any monetary profit you might gain from the sale of your carefully selected tea leaves. The answer to that question begins to emerge during your 10-day stay in Dunhuang, as you find yourself seated on cushions in the private quarters of a local tea merchant named Master Jiang, sharing fermented mare's milk with a group of traders whose combined experience spans nearly every route connecting east and west. The pungent, slightly alcoholic beverage burns your throat with its unfamiliar intensity, Yet the warmth spreading through your chest seems to dissolve barriers between strangers that formal politeness alone could never breach. Master Zhang's compound occupies a privileged location within Dunhuang's merchant quarter, its walls high enough to block the desert winds that carry sand into every crevice of the city, while remaining low enough to comply with regulations governing foreign traders' accommodations. The courtyard where you gather each evening after the day's business concludes contains a small garden, where vegetables grow in soil laboriously transported from distant river valleys, their green leaves providing visual relief from the endless browns and tans that dominate the surrounding landscape. Your host, a man whose family has operated trading establishments in this oasis city for 6 generations, possesses the diplomatic skills necessary for mediating between the dozens of different cultural and commercial traditions that converge in Dunhuang's markets. His Mandarin carries the precise pronunciation of classical education, while his Persian flows with the colloquial ease of daily use, and his knowledge of Turkic dialects enables him to communicate directly with the nomadic herders who bring livestock and animal products to the city's seasonal fairs. The conversations that unfold during these evening gatherings reveal layers of complexity in the tea trade that your provincial background never exposed. The leaves you carry, carefully selected and packed in Master Chen's mountain gardens, represent only one small segment of a vast network of production, processing and distribution that extends from the subtropical valleys of southern China to the cold plateaus of Tibet and the merchant communities scattered across Central Asia. Mahmud, a Bukharan trader whose grey beard speaks of decades spent travelling between the cities of the Amu Darya basin, describes tea markets where your familiar Chinese varieties compete with products grown in Kashmir, Ceylon, and regions whose names you can barely pronounce. His stories of customers who blend different tea types to create flavours suited to local preferences challenge your assumption that the pure, unblended products favoured in Chinese markets represent the pinnacle of tea artistry. In Bukhara, Mahmud explains while warming his hands around a ceramic cup filled with Master Zhang's evening blend, the merchants who cater to wealthy households mix your mountain-grown leaves with rose petals imported from Persia and cardamom pods brought by Indian traders. The resulting brew tastes nothing like the tea your Master Chen would recognise, yet these customers pay premium prices for what they consider the perfect balance of flavours. These revelations force you to reconsider fundamental assumptions about your merchandise and its place in the broader world of international commerce. The tea grades that seemed so clearly defined in the familiar context of Chinese cultivation reveal themselves as merely starting points for complex processes of adaptation and transformation that occur as goods move between different cultural contexts. Your carefully maintained distinctions between superior and inferior leaf qualities matter less than your ability to understand and respond to the diverse preferences of customers whose backgrounds and traditions differ dramatically from your own. The learning process accelerated during your first visits to Dunhuang's tea markets, where the systematic organisation that characterises Chinese commercial districts gives way to a more chaotic but ultimately more diverse arrangement of merchants, goods and services. Here, vendors selling tea sit beside traders offering everything from Tibetan medicinal herbs to Byzantine silk threads, their different specialisations creating opportunities for the cross-cultural exchanges that generate unexpected profits for alert entrepreneurs. Your initial attempts to evaluate market conditions using the methods learned in Chinese trading centres proved inadequate for understanding the complex dynamics operating in this international environment. The seasonal patterns that govern demand in Chinese markets reflect different factors from those affecting prices in cities, where customers include nomadic tribes, settled agricultural communities, and urban populations with varying levels of prosperity and different cultural traditions regarding tea consumption. Master Zhang's guidance during these early market explorations proved invaluable for navigating the unwritten rules and customs that govern commercial interactions in Dunhuang. His introductions opened doors that would have remained closed to a solitary foreign merchant, while his explanations of local business practices prevented the misunderstandings that often destroy promising partnerships before they can develop into profitable relationships. Success in international trade, he explained during one of your morning walks through the market districts, depends less on the quality of your goods than on your ability to understand the stories your customers tell themselves about what they purchase. A Tibetan monk buying tea for ceremonial use evaluates your leaves according to criteria completely different from those employed by a Persian merchant's wife preparing beverages for honoured guests. These insights gradually reshape your approach to evaluating potential customers and presenting your tea for their consideration. Instead of focusing exclusively on the technical qualities that determine grade classifications in the Chinese markets, you learn to listen for the cultural and personal factors that influence purchasing decisions in this more diverse commercial environment. The stories you tell about your tea's origins and characteristics evolve to emphasize the aspects most likely to resonate with each particular buyer's background and interests. Your evening conversations with Master Zhang and his regular guests provide continuing education in the subtle arts of cross-cultural communication that determine success or failure in international markets. Rustam, whose Sogdian heritage places him at the intersection of several major cultural traditions, demonstrates techniques for adjusting your presentation style to match the expectations of different ethnic and religious communities. His advice ranges from practical matters like appropriate greeting customs to more complex issues involving the religious and dietary restrictions that affect some customers' purchasing decisions. The Persian gem trader Darius contributes his own expertise in the psychology of luxury sales, explaining how customers' perceptions of value depend not only on objective product qualities, but also on the circumstances surrounding the purchase transaction. His stories of successful negotiations reveal the importance of creating an atmosphere of exclusivity and refinement that justifies premium prices, while his accounts of failed sales illustrate the dangers of misreading customer motivations and preferences. These lessons in commercial psychology prove immediately applicable to your own sales efforts as you begin meeting with potential customers for your tea. The first serious buyer to examine your goods, a wealthy Sogdian merchant named Caravan, who supplies luxury items to the court of a local prince, evaluates your samples according to criteria that initially seem completely arbitrary. He examines the colour and texture of dried leaves with the intensity of a jeweller appraising precious stones, but his questions focus on the altitude at which the tea was grown and the phase of the moon during which the leaves were picked. Your initial impulse to dismiss these concerns as superstitious nonsense gives way to respectful attention as Master Zhang quietly explains their commercial significance. Caravan's customers, members of a court where Persian and Chinese cultural influences have blended into unique hybrid traditions, associate specific tea characteristics with astrological and medicinal beliefs that determine their willingness to pay premium prices. Your ability to provide satisfactory answers to these apparently esoteric questions could determine whether this potential sale succeeds or fails. The negotiation process that follows your initial presentation extends over several days, reflecting the deliberate pace that characterizes high-value transactions in markets where personal relationships matter more than standardized pricing. Each meeting involves not only discussion of commercial terms, but also the gradual development of mutual trust and understanding that enables both parties to feel confident about their eventual agreement. Caravan's approach to these negotiations reveals the sophisticated understanding of international trade that successful merchants operating in cosmopolitan centres like Dunhuang must possess. His questions about your background and business practices aim not merely to verify your reliability as a trading partner, but also to assess your potential value as a long-term source of goods and information. The prices he offers reflect not only the current market value of your tea, but also his evaluation of the benefits that an ongoing relationship might provide. Your own negotiating skills, developed in the more straightforward commercial environment of Chinese markets, require significant adaptation to succeed in this more complex setting. The direct discussion of prices and terms that characterises business dealings between Chinese merchants gives way to a more indirect approach that allows both parties to maintain dignity while exploring the possibilities for mutually beneficial arrangements. The process of learning these new negotiation techniques provides insights into your own cultural assumptions and preferences that you had never previously examined. The comfort you felt with the clear hierarchies and explicit rules governing business relationships in Chinese society contrasts sharply with the ambiguity and flexibility that characterize commercial interactions in Dunhuang's multicultural environment. Yet this discomfort gradually transforms into appreciation for the creative possibilities that emerge when different approaches to problem-solving intersect and influence each other. Your growing facility with these cross-cultural business practices becomes evident during negotiations with subsequent potential customers, each of whom presents different challenges and opportunities for developing your skills. A Tibetan trader interested in tea for religious ceremonies requires careful attention to the spiritual dimensions of your product's origins and preparation. A Turkish merchant planning to carry your tea to markets in Anatolia focuses on its keeping qualities and resistance to the deterioration that can occur during very long journeys. Each of these interactions adds layers to your understanding of the tea trade's true complexity, while simultaneously revealing aspects of your own character and capabilities that remained hidden during your earlier career as a provincial merchant. The confidence you develop in handling these challenging negotiations reflects not only growing expertise in commercial matters, but also a deeper transformation in your sense of personal identity and potential. The social dimensions of your stay in Dunhuang extend beyond the purely commercial relationships formed in market settings to include participation in the cultural and religious life of this diverse community. Evening gatherings in Master Zhang's compound often include local scholars, religious teachers, and artists whose perspectives on life along the Silk Road provide broader context for understanding your own experiences as a travelling merchant. Brother Francis, a Nestorian monk whose small Christian community maintains a chapel near the city's western gate, describes the spiritual challenges faced by travellers who spend months crossing landscapes where the familiar landmarks and social structures of home provide no guidance for daily decisions. His conversations with merchants from many different religious backgrounds have convinced him that the interior journey undertaken during long trading expeditions often proves more transformative than the physical movement between distant cities. The desert, he observes during one memorable evening when conversation turned to the psychological effects of extended travel, strips away the external supports that normally define our sense of who we are. When you can no longer depend on family, community, and familiar surroundings to tell you how to behave, you must discover what principles and values actually govern your actions from within. These philosophical discussions, conducted in the relaxed atmosphere that accompanies Master Zhang's excellent tea and the shared experience of life far from home, provide opportunities for reflection that the busy activity of daily travel rarely allows. Your fellow merchants share stories of moments when the challenges of their journeys forced them to confront fundamental questions about their priorities, relationships, and understanding of their place in the larger world. Li Wei, your original partner whose silk goods have attracted considerable interest from local buyers, describes his growing realization that the commercial success he had always considered his primary goal matters less than the personal growth resulting from exposure to different ways of thinking and living. His words echo thoughts that have been developing in your own mind as the familiar certainties of your previous life give way to a more flexible and questioning approach to fundamental issues. These evening conversations often continue until the oil lamps burn low, and the desert cold penetrates even the sheltered courtyard where you gather. The stars visible through Dunhuang's clear atmosphere seem to reflect the vast possibilities that have opened before you during these weeks of travel and cultural exchange. The person you were when departing Master Chen's tea garden seems increasingly distant, replaced by someone whose understanding of both business and life has expanded in directions that would have been impossible to imagine just a few months ago. As your stay in Dunhuang approaches its end and preparations begin for the next phase of your journey towards Samarkand, you find yourself measuring the value of this experience in terms that extend far beyond the commercial profits that originally motivated your expedition. The tea you carry will eventually be sold and consumed, its physical existence transformed into the money that justifies the risks and hardships of long-distance trade. But the changes occurring within yourself during these months of travel seem likely to endure long after your merchandise has disappeared and your immediate commercial objectives have been achieved. Standing in Master Jiang's courtyard on your final evening in Dunhuang, sharing one last cup of tea brewed from leaves that soon will be dispersed among customers across Central Asia, you wonder whether the insights you have gained about yourself and the world during this journey represent a form of wealth more valuable than any monetary profit, and whether the person you are becoming through this process of discovery will prove capable of returning to the simpler certainties of your former life. That question weighs heavily on your mind 3 weeks later as you crouch beside a stream in the Tian Shan Mountains, watching helplessly as muddy water seeps through a crack in one of your bamboo baskets, turning your carefully preserved tea leaves into a sodden, worthless mass. The mountain rain that has fallen steadily for 2 days shows no sign of stopping, and the normally reliable waterproofing techniques that have protected your cargo through countless previous challenges seem pitifully inadequate against this relentless assault of moisture from above and below. The disaster began during yesterday's river crossing, when patients stumbled on the slippery rocks of a ford that Rustam's maps indicated as safe and shallow during the season. The basket containing your finest white eyebrow tea struck a boulder as she regained her footing, creating a hairline crack that remained invisible until this morning's inspection revealed the catastrophic damage occurring within. Now, as you carefully extract handfuls of ruined leaves and spread them on canvas sheets in a desperate attempt to salvage something from the loss, the weight of wet tea feels heavier than any burden you have ever carried. Your travelling companions gather around the damaged cargo with the solemn expressions of mourners attending a funeral. Their sympathy genuine, but their inability to offer meaningful assistance highlighting the solitary nature of commercial disaster. Rustam examines the crack with the thoroughness of a physician diagnosing illness, his weathered hands tracing the path of water penetration, while his mind calculates the financial implications of this setback for your shared expedition. Perhaps half can be saved, he concludes, after completing his examination, if we can dry it thoroughly before mould begins growing. But the grade... He shakes his head, unwilling to voice the obvious truth that your premium tea has been transformed into a product barely suitable for the lowest market segments. The practical response to this crisis requires immediate action despite the emotional shock of watching months of careful preparation destroyed by a moment's bad fortune. Li Wei, whose silk goods have remained safely dry thanks to their different packing methods, contributes canvas from his own supplies to create makeshift drying surfaces. Darius offers the loan of a small portable brazier that might provide enough heat to accelerate the drying process if the rain eventually stops, and sufficient fuel can be found in this barren landscape. Your efforts to salvage the damaged tea continue throughout the grey, drizzling day as your caravan makes slow progress along muddy trails that challenge even the sure-footed camel's ability to maintain their balance. The constant motion makes effective drying impossible, forcing you to content yourself with frequent inspections and the periodic rearrangement of leaves in hopes of preventing the total loss that would result if fermentation begins before proper preservation can be achieved. The psychological impact of this setback proves more challenging than the immediate practical problems it creates. The confidence you had developed during your successful negotiations in Dunhuang evaporates like steam from a hot teacup, replaced by doubts about your judgment, preparation, and fundamental suitability for the demands of long-distance trade. The careful calculations that justified undertaking this expedition assumed the safe arrival of your tea in marketable condition. The financial consequences of major cargo loss threaten not only your immediate commercial objectives, but also your family's economic security during the difficult months ahead. These personal concerns intensify during the evening halt, when the continuing rain forces your caravan to establish camp in less than ideal conditions beside a swollen stream whose banks provide minimal shelter from the weather. The animals huddle together for warmth while their human companions crowd into the few tents available, creating an atmosphere of enforced intimacy that makes private reflection almost impossible. Your fellow merchants' attempts at encouraging conversation feel hollow against the backdrop of your visible distress over the damaged cargo. Master Jiang's teachings about the psychological dimensions of international trade assume new relevance as you struggle to maintain emotional equilibrium in the face of circumstances beyond your control. His stories of successful merchants who overcame similar setbacks had seemed merely interesting during your comfortable evenings in Dunhuang. Now they provide essential guidance for surviving the mental challenges that threaten to overwhelm rational decision-making during times of crisis. The desert teaches patience, you remember him saying during one of those philosophical discussions, because it reminds us constantly that human plans mean nothing to wind, sand and weather. The merchants who survive long enough to achieve real success are those who learn to bend without breaking, who can adapt their objectives to changing circumstances while maintaining focus on their ultimate goals. The wisdom of these words becomes apparent as you spend the sleepless hours before dawn examining your situation from multiple perspectives, searching for creative responses that might transform apparent disaster into unexpected opportunity. The damaged tea, while no longer suitable for the premium markets you had originally targeted, might still find buyers among customers whose priorities emphasize price over perfect quality. More importantly, this setback provides valuable lessons about risk management and cargo protection that could prevent similar losses during future expeditions. Your morning inspection of the damaged tea reveals both encouraging and discouraging developments. The leaves exposed to the most moisture have indeed begun fermenting, their colour darkening and their aroma developing, the musty notes that indicate irreversible deterioration. However, the portions that remained relatively dry maintain enough of their original character to justify continued efforts at preservation, particularly if alternative marketing strategies can be developed to accommodate their reduced quality. The technical challenge of properly drying tea leaves under adverse field conditions requires innovative applications of traditional preservation methods. Rustam contributes his knowledge of techniques used by Central Asian herders for preserving meat and dairy products in wet weather, while Li Wei adapts silk drying procedures that might prove applicable to your different but related problems. These collaborative problem-solving sessions demonstrate the collective wisdom that emerges when experienced travellers pool their specialised knowledge to address unexpected challenges. The makeshift drying operation you establish during the next suitable halt represents a triumph of improvisation over adversity. Canvas sheets stretched between camel packs create windscreens that protect small fires from the persistent mountain breezes, while carefully arranged rocks provide elevated surfaces that keep drying tea away from ground moisture. The process requires constant attention and frequent rearrangement of materials, but the gradual improvement in your tea's condition provides hope that total loss can be avoided. Your fellow merchants' assistance during this crisis reveals dimensions of their characters that normal travel conditions never expose. Ahmed, whose usual reserve dissolves in the face of genuine need, contributes both labour and materials without any expectation of compensation or future reciprocity. His actions reflect the unwritten code of mutual assistance that binds caravan members together during emergencies, creating obligations and relationships that extend far beyond immediate commercial interests. The Persian gem trader Darius surprises everyone by demonstrating unexpected expertise in botanical preservation techniques learned during previous encounters with similar problems. His systematic approach to sorting and treating different grades of damaged tea maximizes the salvage potential, while minimizing the labour required for processing materials that may ultimately prove worthless. These skills, apparently acquired through years of dealing with humidity-sensitive merchandise, highlight the depth of knowledge that successful long-distance traders must accumulate across many different specialised areas. The gradual improvement in weather conditions during the following days allows more effective drying procedures while providing psychological relief from the claustrophobic atmosphere that accompanies extended periods of rain and enforced inactivity. The return of sunshine transforms the landscape from a dreary expanse of mud and mist into the harsh but beautiful mountain scenery that characterises this portion of the Silk Road. More importantly, it enables the completion of your tea preservation efforts under conditions that maximise the chances of producing saleable merchandise from your damaged cargo. The final evaluation of your salvage efforts reveals results better than your most pessimistic fears, but worse than your most optimistic hopes. Approximately 60% of your original tea inventory has been preserved in conditions suitable for sale, though at significantly reduced grades and corresponding price reductions. The financial impact of this loss will require adjustments to your trading strategy and profit expectations, but the disaster falls short of the total ruin that seemed possible during the worst moments of the crisis. Your response to this mixed outcome reflects the personal transformation that has been developing throughout your journey from the familiar world of Chinese tea gardens into the unpredictable realm of international commerce. The despair and self-doubt that initially accompanied the discovery of your damaged cargo give way to a more balanced assessment of both problems and opportunities created by your new circumstances. The experience of successfully managing a serious crisis enhances your confidence in your ability to handle whatever additional challenges the remainder of your journey might present. The commercial implications of your reduced tea inventory require fundamental revisions to the marketing strategy you had developed during your stay in Dunhuang. The premium customers who had seemed most promising for your finest grades will need to be replaced by buyers whose priorities emphasize value over perfect quality. This shift demands different negotiation techniques and presentation methods, but it also opens possibilities for reaching market segments that your original plans had ignored. Rustam's advice during the planning sessions that follow your recovery from the tea crisis emphasizes the importance of maintaining flexibility in all aspects of long-distance trading. His years of experience with similar setbacks have taught him that successful merchants must be prepared to completely restructure their business plans in response to changing circumstances, whether caused by natural disasters, political upheavals, or unexpected shifts in market conditions. The tea you carry now is not the tea you began with, he observes, while helping you reorganize your remaining inventory according to its current rather than original characteristics. But it is still tea that people will want to buy. Your task is to discover who those people are and what stories you must tell to convince them that your goods meet their needs. These conversations about adaptive strategy take place during the long hours of travel that follow your recovery from the mountain crisis, as your caravan descends from the high passes toward the desert, approaches to Samarkand. The landscape changes dramatically during this portion of the journey, shifting from the green valleys and snow-capped peaks of the Tian Shan to the increasingly arid terrain that announces the proximity of your ultimate destination. The psychological effect of approaching the end of your outbound journey creates its own complex mixture of anticipation and apprehension. The commercial success or failure that awaits in Samarkand's markets will determine whether your months of travel and hardship have been worthwhile, but the personal transformation you have experienced during the expedition seems increasingly independent of whatever financial results you might achieve. The person you have become through this process of discovery and adaptation feels fundamentally different from the provincial tea merchant who began this journey with such simple and clearly defined objectives. Your damaged tea, now carefully repacked and properly documented according to its revised grade classifications, represents more than just merchandise to be sold for whatever prices you can negotiate. These leaves, stained and weathered by their journey across mountains and deserts, carry within their altered substance the story of your own evolution from a cautious local trader into someone capable of managing the complex challenges of international commerce. their reduced commercial value feels less important than their symbolic significance as evidence of your growing ability to adapt and survive in circumstances far removed from the familiar patterns of your former life. As your caravan makes its final approach to the walls of Samarkand, visible in the distance like a mirage that gradually solidifies into stone and timber reality, you find yourself contemplating not the profits you hope to earn from selling your tea, but the person you will be when this expedition finally ends. The question that had seemed so pressing during your moments of crisis in the mountains, whether you possess the resilience necessary for success in international trade, has been answered through direct experience rather than abstract speculation. But now you face a different and perhaps more difficult question: whether the expanded understanding of yourself and the world that you have gained through this journey will prove compatible with resuming the smaller, safer existence that awaits your return to the tea gardens of your homeland. The complexity of that question deepens during your first week in Samarkand, as you navigate the labyrinthine social and commercial networks that determine success in this greatest of Central Asian trading centres. The city's massive walls, built from sun-baked bricks that glow golden in the morning light, enclose a world where merchants from every corner of the known world converge to exchange not only goods but also ideas, customs and ways of understanding the relationship between commerce and human connection. Your initial attempts to locate suitable buyers for your weather-damaged tea meet with polite interest but little concrete enthusiasm from the established merchants who control Samarkand's premium markets. The tea dealers who operate from permanent shops in the city's covered bazaars examine your samples with the practiced eye of experts who have seen every variety of leaf that travels the Silk Road, their non-committal responses revealing that your reduced-grade merchandise occupies an uncomfortable middle position between true luxury goods and the common teas that satisfy everyday consumption needs. Master Bahram, whose tea shop occupies a prime location near the bazaar's main entrance, provides the most honest assessment of your commercial prospects during a long afternoon spent examining your entire remaining inventory. His weathered hands move through your samples with the gentle precision of someone who has devoted decades to understanding the subtle differences that separate exceptional teas from merely adequate ones, while his explanations of local market conditions reveal the sophisticated preferences of Samarkand's diverse customer base. Your tea tells an interesting story, he observes, while brewing small samples of your various grades in an array of tiny ceramic cups, each one chosen to enhance the specific characteristics of different leaf types. I can taste the mountain springs where it was processed and smell the bamboo baskets where it travelled, but I can also detect the rain that damaged it and the smoke from the fires you used for drying. Some customers will find this complexity appealing. They appreciate goods that carry evidence of their journeys, but others prefer the pristine perfection that comes only from tea that has never faced such challenges. His words capture the essential dilemma you face in marketing merchandise that no longer fits the clear categories that normally govern tea trading. The damage your cargo suffered in the mountains has created a unique product that appeals to some tastes while disappointing others, requiring a more nuanced approach to sales than the straightforward grade-based pricing that characterises most commercial transactions. Your success in Samarkand will depend on finding the specific customers whose preferences align with what your tea has become, rather than what it was originally intended to be. The search for such customers leads you into social and commercial circles that you would never have encountered under normal trading circumstances. Rustam's introductions open doors to private homes where wealthy merchants' families maintain their own tea preparation traditions, their domestic customs blending Persian, Chinese and local Sogdian influences into hybrid practices that create demand for teas with characteristics that no single cultural tradition would consider ideal. Your first sale occurs not in the formal setting of the covered bazaar, but in the intimate atmosphere of a private courtyard where Mirza Yusuf, a silk merchant whose family has traded with China for 3 generations, entertains guests during the daily ritual that marks the transition from afternoon business to evening leisure. The tea service that accompanies these gatherings follows elaborate protocols that transform simple beverage preparation into artistic performance, each step designed to demonstrate both the host's sophistication and his guests' worthiness to participate in such refined activities. The tea you provide for this ceremony occupies a specific role in the complex social dynamics that govern relationships among Samarkand's merchant elite. Mirza Yusuf's selection of your weather-damaged leaves over the premium grades available from established suppliers represents a deliberate choice that communicates multiple messages to his guests about his character, values, and commercial philosophy. His willingness to serve tea that carries visible evidence of its journey across dangerous terrain demonstrates his appreciation for the human effort and risk-taking that make long-distance trade possible. Perfect tea, he explains while demonstrating the proper technique for appreciating your leave's unique aroma, tells us nothing about the courage required to bring it from distant gardens to our tables. This tea speaks of mountains climbed, rivers crossed, and storms survived. When I serve it to my guests, I honour not only the plant that provided these leaves, but also the merchant who risked everything to deliver them to my city. These philosophical reflections on the relationship between commercial goods and human experience resonate deeply with your own evolving understanding of what your journey has accomplished. The financial profits that originally motivated your expedition seem increasingly secondary to the personal growth and cultural understanding you have gained through months of challenging travel and cross-cultural interaction. Yet the practical necessity of earning enough money to justify your investment and support your family during the return journey requires continued focus on the commercial objectives that brought you to Samarkand. The gradual development of your customer base in this sophisticated market demands skills that extend far beyond simple product knowledge and price negotiation. Each potential buyer represents a unique combination of cultural background, personal preferences, and social obligations that determine their interest in your particular type of tea. Your success depends on understanding these complex factors and adapting your presentation to emphasize the aspects most likely to appeal to each individual customer. The Persian physician Ibn Sina, whose interest in medicinal teas leads him to examine your samples from a therapeutic rather than purely gustatory perspective, focuses on the biochemical changes that occurred when your leaves were exposed to mountain moisture and wood smoke. His questions about the specific conditions under which your tea was processed reveal an understanding of how environmental factors affect the chemical compounds that determine therapeutic effectiveness, knowledge that enables him to identify potential medical applications for your uniquely modified product. The fermentation that began in your damaged leaves, he explains while carefully examining dried samples under a magnifying lens imported from Byzantine workshops, may have created compounds that provide benefits different from those found in perfectly preserved tea. The interaction between mountain water, wood smoke, and natural plant enzymes could produce substances useful for treating digestive ailments or respiratory conditions that pure tea cannot address. These technical discussions expand your own understanding of your merchandise, while providing marketing approaches that emphasize benefits rather than defects. The story you tell about your tea's journey transforms from an apologetic explanation of damage into a positive account of beneficial transformation, reframing your cargo's altered characteristics as valuable features rather than unfortunate accidents. This shift in perspective proves crucial for negotiations with customers whose priorities emphasize functional rather than aesthetic considerations. The social dimensions of tea trading in Samarkand extend beyond individual transactions to include participation in the complex web of relationships that bind the city's merchant community together. Your acceptance into this network requires demonstration of both commercial competence and cultural sensitivity, qualities that must be displayed through actions rather than words during the extended courtship that precedes serious business relationships. The evening gatherings that take place in various merchants' homes provide opportunities for this gradual process of social acceptance, while offering insights into the domestic customs that shape daily life among Samarkand's cosmopolitan elite. The tea ceremonies that accompany these gatherings follow elaborate protocols that vary according to the host's cultural background and the specific combination of guests present on any particular evening, creating social situations that require constant attention to subtle cues about appropriate behaviour. Your growing facility with these complex social requirements reflects the broader personal transformation that has occurred during your journey from the simpler world of Chinese provincial trading to the sophisticated international environment of Central Asia's greatest commercial centre. The confidence you develop in navigating unfamiliar social situations parallels your increasing ability to adapt your business practices to the demands of diverse markets and customer types. The friendships that gradually develop with other foreign merchants provide both practical assistance and emotional support during the challenging process of establishing yourself in Samarkand's competitive commercial environment. Ibrahim al-Andalusi, a trader from distant Spain whose amber and coral jewellery appeals to wealthy women throughout Central Asia, shares techniques for building customer loyalty that transcend simple price competition. His stories of successful partnerships formed during previous visits to Samarkand reveal the importance of maintaining long-term relationships that survive the inevitable fluctuations in market conditions and political circumstances. These international friendships create networks of mutual assistance that extend far beyond immediate commercial interests to include the sharing of information, resources, and opportunities that benefit all participants. When Ibrahim learns of a wealthy widow seeking high-quality tea for a memorial ceremony honouring her deceased husband, he recommends your services not because of any expectation of direct benefit, but because such referrals strengthen the bonds of trust and reciprocity that make successful long-distance trading possible. The memorial ceremony for which you provide tea represents one of your most meaningful sales, though not necessarily your most profitable. The widow, Bibi Kanom, seeks tea that carries symbolic significance, appropriate for honouring her husband's memory and demonstrating her family's continuing prosperity to the community leaders who will attend the event. Your weather-damaged tea, with its visible evidence of journey and transformation, appeals to her desire for beverages that embody the themes of struggle, perseverance, and ultimate success that defined her husband's career as a caravan leader. The preparation and service of tea during this solemn ceremony requires careful attention to details that extend far beyond simple brewing techniques. The selection of appropriate cups, the arrangement of serving trays, the timing of each stage in the preparation process, and the protocol for presenting tea to guests according to their social rank all contribute to the event's success in conveying the intended messages about the deceased character and his family's continuing status within Samarkand's merchant community. Your participation in this ceremony provides profound insights into the role that commercial goods play in the social and spiritual life of trading communities throughout Central Asia. The tea you supply serves not merely as a beverage, but as a medium for communication, a tool for demonstrating respect, and a symbol of the connections that bind individuals together across cultural and temporal boundaries. The profits you earn from this transaction feel less important than the honour of contributing to a ritual that celebrates the life of someone who devoted his career to the same dangerous but essential work of carrying goods across the vast distances that separate different worlds. The weeks spent in Samarkand gradually exhaust your tea inventory as you complete sales to an increasingly diverse array of customers whose different backgrounds and requirements stretch your understanding of your product's potential applications. The final transactions, conducted with traders preparing for their own journeys to distant markets, complete the circle that began when you first loaded your carefully packed baskets onto Patience's back in the courtyards of Master Chen's tea garden. Yet as you complete the accounting that summarises your expedition's financial results, tallying the profits earned against the investments made and risks undertaken during your months of travel, you realise that the most significant outcomes of your journey cannot be measured in monetary terms. The person you have become through this process of discovery and adaptation possesses knowledge, skills, and perspectives that represent a form of wealth more durable than any commercial profit. The question that had seemed so urgent during your crisis in the mountains, whether you possess the resilience necessary for success in international trade, has been answered definitively through direct experience. But now, as you prepare for the return journey that will carry you back to the familiar landscapes of your homeland, you face a different and perhaps more challenging uncertainty. The expanded understanding of yourself and the world that you have gained through this expedition has fundamentally altered your conception of what constitutes a meaningful and successful life, creating possibilities and obligations that may prove incompatible with simply resuming your former existence as a provincial tea merchant. Standing in the courtyard of the Caravanserai, where you have spent these final weeks in Samarkand, watching the sunset paint the city's ancient walls in shades of gold and amber, while breathing in the complex mixture of spices, dust and wood smoke that characterises this crossroads of civilizations, you wonder whether the most valuable cargo you will carry home from this journey consists not of the silver coins now secured in your money belt, but of the irreversible changes that travel and discovery have wrought within your own understanding of who you are and what your life might become. The answer to that question reveals itself gradually during the 18 months following your return to China, as you find yourself unable to settle back into the comfortable routines that once defined your existence as a provincial tea merchant. The silver coins from your Samarkand sales provide financial security for your family, but the knowledge and perspectives gained during your journey create restlessness that no amount of material prosperity can satisfy. The person who departed Master Chen's tea garden with such clear and simple objectives has been replaced by someone whose understanding of the world's complexity makes former certainties seem naive and insufficient. Your first attempts to resume normal business operations reveal the depth of change that travel has wrought within your character and priorities. The local tea markets that once seemed adequate for your commercial ambitions now feel constrictingly small, their familiar rhythms and limited scope unable to accommodate the expanded vision of what trade might accomplish. The relationships with suppliers and customers that previously provided social satisfaction seem shallow, compared to the deep connections formed with merchants from distant cultures whose different approaches to life and business open new possibilities for understanding human potential. Master Chen, whose tea garden provided the starting point for your transformative journey, notices these changes during your first visit to settle accounts and purchase inventory for the coming season. His weathered hands still move with the same patient precision through dried tea leaves, but his eyes register the restlessness that prevents you from finding contentment in transactions that once provided complete fulfillment. His questions about your experiences in Samarkand elicit stories that reveal not only the commercial success of your expedition, but also the personal growth that represents its most significant outcome. You have acquired more than knowledge of foreign markets, he observes while brewing tea using leaves from the same terraced slopes where your journey began. You carry yourself differently now, speak with the confidence of someone who has tested himself against challenges that most men never face. But I sense also a dissatisfaction, as if the world has become both larger and smaller than you once believed possible. His words capture the essential paradox of your situation, the expanded understanding of global connections and possibilities that makes your local environment seem limited, combined with the deeper appreciation for human universality that reveals the fundamental similarities underlying apparently diverse cultures. This tension between broader perspectives and local realities creates internal conflicts that influence every aspect of your daily life, from business decisions to family relationships to personal goals for the future. The resolution of these conflicts emerges through a gradual process of integration that allows you to apply insights gained during your journey to the practical challenges of life in your home community. Your tea business evolves to emphasize quality and authenticity over simple profit maximization, reflecting values learned through exposure to merchants whose reputations depended on maintaining standards that transcended immediate commercial interests. Your relationships with suppliers and customers deepen as you apply communication skills developed during cross-cultural negotiations to better understand the needs and motivations of people whose backgrounds you had previously taken for granted. Most significantly, you begin sharing stories of your travels with other merchants, craftsmen, and farmers whose limited exposure to the world beyond China's borders makes them hungry for information about distant lands and different ways of living. These informal gatherings, conducted in tea houses and market courtyards throughout your region, create networks of knowledge sharing that gradually influence local attitudes toward trade, cultural exchange, and the possibilities available to individuals willing to risk the familiar for the unknown. The impact of your storytelling extends beyond simple entertainment to include practical guidance for others considering their own journeys into international commerce. Your detailed accounts of everything from packing techniques that prevent moisture damage to negotiation strategies that bridge cultural differences provide valuable preparation for merchants whose success or failure might depend on avoiding the mistakes you learn to overcome through direct experience. More importantly, your emphasis on the personal growth that accompanies commercial travel encourages listeners to view long-distance trade as an opportunity for education and self-discovery, rather than merely a means of earning profit. Your influence spreads through the networks of relationship and recommendation that connect China's merchant community across vast geographical distances. Former customers who appreciated your integrity and expertise recommend you to associates in distant cities, creating demand for your services as both supplier and advisor from traders whose own ambitions have been stimulated by your example. The reputation you develop for reliability and cultural sensitivity opens opportunities to participate in trading expeditions that carry Chinese goods to markets throughout Central Asia, Southeast Asia, and even the distant ports where Arab and Persian merchants conduct business with representatives of the Byzantine Empire. These subsequent journeys, though less transformative than your initial expedition to Samarkand, contribute to the gradual accumulation of knowledge and experience that establishes you as one of your region's most respected authorities on international trade. Your advice influences decisions made by dozens of other merchants, while your willingness to share both successes and failures helps establish more realistic expectations about the challenges and rewards of long-distance commerce. The protocols you develop for everything from cargo protection to cross-cultural communication become standard practices adopted by traders throughout your network. The broader historical significance of your individual journey emerges through its contribution to the expansion of commercial and cultural connections that characterized the Tang dynasty's golden age of international exchange. Your success in Samarkand represents one small thread in the vast tapestry of relationships that link China to the Mediterranean world through networks of trade, diplomacy, and cultural transmission that facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, technologies, and artistic traditions across the known world's entire breadth. The tea you carried from Fujian's mountain gardens to Central Asia's greatest trading centre participated in a process of cultural diffusion that spread Chinese agricultural techniques, processing methods, and consumption customs throughout the regions served by Silk Road commerce. Your detailed descriptions of tea preparation shared with customers and fellow merchants during your time in Samarkand contributed to the development of hybrid tea cultures that blended Chinese traditions with Persian, Sogdian, and Turkish practices to create new forms of social ritual that persist in modified forms to this day. The personal relationships you formed with merchants from different cultural backgrounds helped strengthen the bonds of trust and mutual understanding that made large-scale international commerce possible, despite the enormous challenges of distance, political instability, and cultural difference. Your friendships with traders like Rustam, Darius, and Ibrahim created connections that extended beyond immediate commercial interest to include the sharing of information, resources, and opportunities that benefited entire communities of merchants operating along the Silk Road's various branches. Your journey also contributed to the gradual process of geographical and cultural knowledge accumulation that enabled subsequent generations of travellers to undertake similar expeditions with greater safety and efficiency. The maps you helped verify, the route descriptions you provided, and the detailed accounts of local customs and commercial practices you recorded became part of the collective wisdom that guided later merchants, diplomats, and scholars whose own journeys extended the boundaries of known world geography and cultural understanding. The transformation you experienced during your months of travel represents a pattern repeated countless times throughout history, as individuals whose circumstances required them to venture beyond familiar boundaries discovered capabilities and perspectives they never knew they possessed. Your story reflects the universal human capacity for growth and adaptation when, faced with challenges that demand the development of new skills, the questioning of old assumptions, and the integration of experiences that expand understanding of what life might offer to those willing to embrace uncertainty and risk. The merchant communities throughout Central Asia during the 8th century produced thousands of individuals like yourself, men and women whose personal journeys of discovery contributed to the gradual development of the cosmopolitan outlook that characterized the great trading cities of the Silk Road. Your individual transformation, multiplied across numerous similar experiences, helped create the cultural synthesis that made cities like Samarkand, Bukhara and Kashgar centres of learning and artistic achievement as well as commercial exchange. The confidence you gained through successfully managing the challenges of international trade influenced your approach to all aspects of life, from family relationships to community leadership to personal goal setting. Your expanded perspective on human potential and cultural possibility made you a more effective advocate for progress and innovation within your local community, while your appreciation for diversity and complexity helped you become a more thoughtful and compassionate leader whose influence extended far beyond commercial matters. Your story resonated particularly strongly with younger merchants and craftsmen whose own ambitions had been constrained by limited exposure to possibilities beyond their immediate environment. Your willingness to share both the successes and difficulties of long-distance trade provided realistic guidance that helped others make informed decisions about whether to undertake similar journeys, while your emphasis on personal growth alongside commercial profit encouraged a more holistic approach to career planning that valued education and cultural exchange as well as financial gain. The enduring influence of your journey and the countless similar expeditions undertaken by merchants throughout the Silk Road's active centuries can be traced through multiple channels that continue to shape our modern world. The techniques for preserving and transporting perishable goods that you helped refine contributed to the development of global supply chains that now enable the distribution of products across distances that would have seemed impossible to 8th century traders. The cross-cultural communication skills that proved essential for your success in Samarkand's diverse commercial environment established patterns of international business practice that remain relevant in today's globalized economy. The tea culture that spread from China throughout Central Asia as a result of trading expeditions like yours evolved into the diverse traditions of tea preparation and consumption that characterize modern societies from Morocco to Mongolia. The specific techniques for evaluating tea quality, the ceremonies that transform simple beverage service into social ritual, and the appreciation for tea as a medium for cultural exchange all trace their origins to the patient work of merchants like yourself, who carried not only goods but also knowledge across the vast distances that separated different civilizations. The spirit of curiosity and openness to cultural difference that enabled your success in navigating Samarkand's complex social and commercial environment continues to influence modern approaches to international business, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. The recognition that successful relationships between people from different backgrounds require genuine understanding and respect for unfamiliar customs and perspectives remains as relevant today as it was during your negotiations with Persian gem traders and Sogdian silk merchants in the bazaars of Central Asia. The documentation of travel experiences through journals, letters, and oral accounts that preserved knowledge of roots, customs, and commercial practices established traditions of information sharing that evolved into modern systems of business intelligence, cultural research, and international education. Your careful observations of everything from weather patterns to local customs contributed to the accumulation of knowledge that enabled subsequent generations to undertake similar journeys with greater safety and efficiency, while your willingness to share this information freely helped establish the cooperative spirit that made large-scale international trade possible. The personal transformation you experience through exposure to different ways of thinking and living reflects a pattern that continues to characterize individuals whose circumstances enable them to venture beyond familiar cultural boundaries. The confidence, adaptability, and cultural sensitivity you developed during your journey represent qualities that remain essential for success in any endeavour that requires navigation of diverse social and professional environments, whether in historical trading expeditions or modern international careers. Your legacy lies not in any single dramatic achievement, but in the quiet accumulation of small acts of bridge building between cultures, the patient development of relationships that transcended immediate commercial interests, and the gradual expansion of possibilities for human connection across the apparent barriers of language, religion, and custom. The tea stains that marked your journey from Master Chen's garden to Samarkand's markets fade with time, but the pathways of understanding you helped create between distant peoples continue to nourish connections that span our interconnected modern world. Like morning mist rising from mountain tea gardens, your story disperses into the vast atmosphere of human experience, while leaving behind the essential moisture that enables new growth in places where strangers once feared to venture.